Ask ourselves, what indeed is compassion? A Buddhist definition of compassion states, the heart that trembles in the face of suffering. This seems to be the way that the word is used here. It seems to be like an adjective, like it's describing something. But in Webster's dictionary, compassion has characterized as the ability to be a noun, a verb, an adjective, and an adverb. So the Buddhist definition describes a feeling and awareness. It's kind of like an adjective. But what if compassion in the face of suffering cannot remain an adjective and still be compassion, but it must become a verb as a caterpillar does a butterfly? So it's a call for action.
What are your thoughts on the butterfly effect?
It continues. Yeah, the butterfly effect, I could give you a dissertation on that, but it's going to take me off track.
All right.
So in this situation, when we see things going on in the world, and there are always things going on in the world that are difficult to feel, difficult to imagine, difficult to understand. But we have three choices. When we see something happening in front of us, we can turn away so that we don't have to feel something. And so as not to have compassion. Because to have compassion means to feel. And second choice is we could stand and tremble in the heart that trembles in the face of suffering. Or we can take action. So this is about how we can take action effectively. Oh, going the wrong way. Always right backwards anyway. Well, silence is the universal language which resides at the root of all sound. And so all the sounds we hear come from silence, and everything that exists comes from emptiness. So we're going to light some sage and have a moment of silence, just a short one. So the most important thing for us to understand as humans on this planet right now is that we're all fractals of one being that we call humanity. And so when you see someone else, you're looking at another version of yourself. And it's impossible to harm another being without harming yourself. And beyond the veil of appearances resides the true nature of reality. So what that means is that the things appear to be a certain way, right? And then there's that way that they appear, and it's the way that they really are. And we have to see past the way things appear in order to see the way they really are. And so we have a website, uugccr.com, and it's about helping to catalyze a quantum shift in human consciousness. If anybody wants to check it out. And yes, I made this crown that I'm wearing. I never thought I'd be wearing a crown, but here I am, in front of a camera wearing a crown. And when I first made the crown, I didn't really know what it was for. And then I felt a little strange wearing it sometimes, so I asked, and I was told that it's a Prince of Peace crown. And it's for basically practitioners of compassion and nonviolence. And if you're one of those, feel free to get in touch through the website and I could make you one. I also have a bunch of prints, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. We're here today to talk about compassion. And the intention is, well, the theory is that if we apply universal, unconditional, global compassion to any situation, we can resolve any difficulty that we're having. And when we don't do that, pretty much we don't really solve things. We just put a patch on it, and we fix one problem, and in the process of so doing, we create another problem. It's only when pure of heart, universal, unconditional, global compassion is applied across the board equally to all humans that we can have the healing, and that's the quantum shift. You know, we had Darwin who talked about slow gradual change, but it doesn't explain how a fish became a frog, because the changes in the climate were so rapid it didn't leave time for this. So what we understand now is that there's periods of slow gradual change in between periods of sudden rapid change, which are quantum shifts. And what we need now, if we're going to continue to be a viable species dwelling on this planet, is we need a quantum shift. And so the website, and we're here to help catalyze that. And specifically today, the intention is that by applying this principle to the situation, that we're going to figure it out, and we're going to resolve the Gaza crisis. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to convince the world that the humane thing to do, and that it's actually our responsibility, and the responsibility of every country that's part of the Genocide Convention, because it says that it's their responsibility to help, right? And so we're going to apply universal, unconditional, global compassion to the situation, and we're going to see that we not need to actually be proactive in a way that we're reaching out and we're rescuing the Palestinians. We're bringing them somewhere safe. The ones who want to leave. The ones who want to leave, we need to find out who they are, and we need to go get them and bring them somewhere. And that will start to diffuse the tension and lead to a resolution, which we have details also. We get to that. So still in the middle of this process, and felt like there were energies trying to stop me from doing this. So there's been a lot to overcome the last month or so. I'm not fully coordinated here, but I'm going to skip in and out of my notes and make sure we cover the main points. So this is a message for humanity. And the title is Universal Unconditional Global Compassion as applied to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It is a compassionate solution, and this is a practical application to whom it may concern, and that should be all humans, because this is something that Israel, spoken to the United States, and spoken to all humanity, and now I'm here to address the whole world, the collective consciousness of all humanity. So here it goes, and not for nothing. One study of the Holocaust showed a map of the spread of a virus, and then it compared that map to the rise of anti-Semitism throughout Europe in that time. And the maps looked very, very similar. And so the theory was proposed in that particular book, I don't remember which book, but that hate spreads like a virus. And Poland, for example, had its own version of rising anti-Semitism well in advance of the Nazi invasion. But when we can see that hatred is behaving like a virus, right? We know what happens when there's a virus. It spreads, goes viral. And so hatred is like a virus. When it reaches a certain energetic threshold, it goes viral literally. It reaches a certain critical mass, and then it just kind of keeps going. And like you got too close to the amplifier with the microphone. So does anybody know about the difference between grasshoppers and locusts?
Can you tell me how, as a community of those that are awakened of the heart, how they can facilitate living the New Jerusalem and the paradigm here as we accept refugees? Living out the new heaven and new earth.
It's all about compassion. When you're in compassion, there can't be any judgment. Judgment limits compassion.
And mercy triumphs over judgment.
Right? I'm sure. No doubt.
Hence the mercy seat of all humanity's heart.
Right. Yep, it's about coming from the heart. So this is why all the logic that says, oh, we shouldn't do this because this and this and this and this, and we can't do this because this and this and this. Well, that's all not coming from the heart. The heart is just one thing. So you feel something, and it compels you.
So what I heard throughout all your beautiful illustration was the facilitating of a kingdom and a paradigm of peace.
Right.
So as the refugees are dispersed, he's coming as a paradigm of peace with healing in his wings.
Of course. Yeah, so we need to work together and we need to do this. We need to revolutionize the peace movement, the anti-war movement, into change it from pro-anti to pro-pro.
Absolutely. So as an act of worship, it is true worship and true compassion then is to provide sanctuary for the widows and the orphans. And so then all then have become aliened, and once was a nation that began as a root before there was divisions of the Jews and the Palestinians. We need to come back to one heart and one mind as a people and as cultures.
Yeah, well, the people that are there that don't want to fight with the Jews, don't want to destroy the Jews, and the people that are there that want to fight the Jews and want to, then that population that doesn't want to fight, that doesn't have, enmity to feel like they need to destroy the Jewish people or that they need to live in hatred or dwell in hatred, they want to leave. It's really that simple. And obviously they want to leave. There have to be people there that want to leave, that would be happy to leave, that would place their well-being, even if they have hatred, that well-being is more important to them. And then the people that have hatred, that their hatred is more important to them than their well-being. And there's that on both sides. So, there's going to be probably, if this thing escalates to the point of where Israel is really in trouble militarily and is being assaulted, and there's large-scale slaughter, there's going to be a third Jewish diaspora. And, the Palestinian diaspora can alleviate that and prevent that from happening.
I personally believe that one enlightened being can create a butterfly effect that can create a domino effect to bring restoration to all the generations. So thank you for sharing the keys of your journey and your expanded heart. We are all very grateful. So you are my brother and you are my friend. And thank you for providing a very admirable and worthy route of peace that people and humanity may all have equality and sanctuary.
Oh.
So, much gratitude.
Om Mani Padme Hum. Ahom Atakiwasin. Hanta Yo.
Shalom.
Oh. Morphological, changes morphologically. Well, what happens is grasshoppers act independently, just like as individuals. But when they reach a certain threshold of crowding and the wings start rubbing together, it creates a frequency, and that frequency triggers a morphological change and a behavioral change that happens with crowding. The 7-year locust swarms at regular intervals. Well, this can be likened to human behavior, where we have World War I, World War II, and potentially now, if we don't prevent it, which is what we're doing here today, preventing World War III. And war can be described as a morphological and behavioral change that occurs on crowding. It's a shift in consciousness that is the default setting, the lowest entropy of chaos that can result from our failure to be fully conscious, to choose compassion, or to not choose out of what? The alternative is applying universal, unconditional, global compassion, that is love, compassion, empathy, and forgiveness. In this matter, we hereby choose consciousness, which is compassion, which is universal and unconditional, and we create a different paradigm, we create a different frequency that triggers a different rubbing together of a different kind of wings, love wings. And so we can have a harmonious morphological and behavioral shift, which is the quantum shift in human consciousness. So that's the threshold that we're at as the species, that in our stage of evolution, that you could call it the dividing of the way. Or some people are going to go this way, and some people are going to go this way, or we're just going to self-destruct, or we're going to reach the next level in our evolution. We can do this, but we're not going to do it, we're not going to accomplish it by sitting around waiting for, say, some country to have the idea that it would be a good idea to get some Palestinians and have them go somewhere else where they'd be safe. So we can't sit around waiting for that. We have to take the initiative. This is how we can do it. What we have to do is we have to reconfigure and redirect the political movement, the peace movement, that has risen in response to the Israeli bombardment and starvation of the people of Gaza. So, back in, 1970, we had the anti-war movement, stop the war in Vietnam. Well, we stopped the draft anyway. So the current platform of the peace movement, as it's presenting, might have some minor variations, but the main thing about it seems to be it's pro-Palestinian and anti-Zionism. And Israel, in its idea to be a Jewish state, that's Zionism. Okay, Zionism comes from the idea that a lot of times the word Zionism is used in a negative connotation. So I want to differentiate. Zionism is just an idea that God, through Moses, promised a certain geographical location to these certain people. Right? I'm not trying to be anti-Zionist, but I think that that's a misunderstanding. I think the only God is the God of compassion. And so the God of compassion would say, so the peace movement basically is pro-Palestinian and anti-Zionism, which means anti the Jewish state, anti the idea of there being that there can be an exclusively Jewish state. And so the way it presents is, it says, we're demanding a ceasefire, and we're demanding that the United States stop funding Israel. Well, there's something about that is invisible in the news. You won't find anyone say this, and certainly the United States government would never tell you the real reasons why we won't withdraw funding. I'm meaning the United States. I'm American. Why the United States government will not withhold funding, military support to Israel, no matter what Israel does. And the reason why, in my opinion, is they can't. Because if they withdraw the funding, and then the enemies of Israel find out that the United States is no longer funding Israel, then Israel's vulnerable. Okay, and it has a lot of enemies. It's surrounded by enemies. It's a tiny country surrounded by, and it's not able to defend itself effectively. And the enemies of Israel know that. So as soon as they know the United States has maybe run out of bullets or run out of money or has, Congress saying this and that, then Israel is too vulnerable. And so even if we stop funding, then the situation escalates at that point and we get drawn back in. So yes, the peace movement is basically saying, stop the funding and demanding that the funding stop and demanding that the bombing stop. Right. Well, in my opinion, these efforts are an exercise in futility for three reasons. One, okay, we just discussed that. So the United States has gotten itself into a quagmire because anytime over the last 76 years, since 1947, the United States could have exerted pressure on Israel to change its policies. the domination of Israel over the Palestinian people, and the injustice coming out of that. Not saying that the Palestinians never had just their own endemic hatred for Jews, but the way that they've been treated for, when you mistreat a group of people, it creates a climate where you create enemies. It's enemy creation. Right? So, to whatever extent Israel in its actions has contributed to the problem, helped to create the problem that it's dealing with right now. And the United States is complicit in that because we continue to allow it all these years. But now we're in quicksand. We helped create this situation, and so desperate people or desperate countries are capable of doing desperate things, and things that might not be logical, things that might not be rational, because they're acting out of desperation, not out of rationality. And we know that Israel has at least 80 nuclear warheads. So we're just dealing with a high-risk situation. And a government, like the Israeli government, that holds itself, any government who holds itself as superior to others, to other governments, other whoever, won't allow itself to be destroyed, irregardless of the consequences, even if it means that everyone and everything gets destroyed, and it still gets destroyed. It's not going to reason out, okay, we can just get destroyed because if we lash out and prevent ourselves from getting destroyed, we'd be getting destroyed anyway, and so let's not do it, let's just let ourselves be destroyed. It's not like that. It doesn't work that way. That's not the kind of government that's in power in Israel. Well, he who hates is irrational. And irrational people, irrational countries can do irrational things. Hatred is irrational because it's ultimately and intrinsically self-destructive. So, it's kind of like if the United States keeps funding Israel and Israel keeps doing whatever it's doing, it will lead to a global conflict, which is basically escalating World War III into something that becomes out of control. The weapons that we have get out of our control. But if the United States stopped the funding, it might slow down the bombing or even stop the bombing. But it won't stop the large-scale destruction and loss of human life. Even if they stop the bombing right now, it's largely achieved its goal already, which is the destruction of all the infrastructure that supports human life. So, in 1949, they had what's called the Nakba, which was the catastrophe for the Arab people, which was the Jews that were coming in, that had nowhere to go because no one wanted them back after the war, and Jewish refugee population needed someplace to go, and they felt that they would be safe if they had their own country. And then the United Nations approved it they needed 7 out of 11 votes to make that decision of the UN Security Council, and it got 9 of those votes, and Egypt just didn't vote. No, Egypt voted against, 1 vote against, and Great Britain abstained. So we had the United Nations make the State of Israel. And then the State of Israel attempted to expel the Palestinian population, and we're driving them south to Egypt, north into Lebanon and east into Yemen and Syria. And then those countries decided they had enough after 700,000 of them had exited. And the rest of the population was trapped. So basically they're a captive population, both population in the West Bank and in Gaza. They can't go into Israel and they can't go out of Gaza. They can't go anywhere. So they're prisoners. And really Israel basically feels that they don't want to have this hostile population. And they really want it gone. So basically saying from 1949, the policy of Israel was forced ethnic cleansing through forced expulsion of the Palestinian people. And that process hasn't gone anywhere since 1949. And so that's their real motive, is to have that land that God promised, right? And just have it to themselves and just for Jews, just a Jewish state, or at least a state that's Jewish run, whatever. So Zionism is just the idea that there's this place. It's not really a place, it's really a way of being. So the God of compassion promised the people of Israel and that if they practiced this way of living, that they would create paradise on earth. And if they didn't, they would experience hell on earth. Right? So maybe it was never about a place. That's at least what I think. But anyway, and the idea that it's about a place, that's Zionism, right? And so the end justifies the means. That's not Zionism, that's radical fundamentalism. Right? So you have on both sides, you have radical fundamentalism, Islam, which is most concentrated and personified to the most extreme in the form of Hamas, and radical fundamentalism embedded in the leadership of Israel that's, determined to have this place. And the radical fundamentalists on the other side are determined to have this place. But it's not the people of Israel, it's not the Palestinians. So I attended a gig for Gaza, it was called, and the focus was pro-Palestinian, anti-Zionism, Israel, and it was about fundraising for the purpose of feeding the children of Gaza. Well, it's a noble effort, but again, it's a virtual exercise in futility, as the issue is not a shortage of food. The issue is getting it there. The food is at the gates, waiting to come in, and it's not being allowed in at a sufficient rate. So we put our efforts to much better use. If we would raise, say, let's raise $100 million and let's post it as a reward to the first country who will offer asylum to 100,000 Palestinians. And let's demonstrate about it. Let's embarrass the countries of the world. Let's just say that, it's in the Genocide Convention, that it's the responsibility of every country that's signatory to the Genocide Convention, that if there's genocide going on, it's their responsibility to do something about it. Okay, well, demanding a ceasefire and making UN resolutions isn't really doing something about it, it's saying something about it. So if the imperative is that we do something about it, and compassion dictates we have to go get those people out of there. We have to do that. And so the peace movement could focalize this point. We could say that we're demonstrating and we're demanding that the United States bring 100,000 Palestinians here from, right now. Rescue 100,000. And let's get 20 countries each rescue 100,000. And what it is really is, okay, I don't need this. So here's the rhetoric, okay? The arguments against what I'm saying, right? But these are the main arguments. We can't rescue Palestinian refugees because that would be helping Israel accomplish the forced expulsion, ethnic cleansing through forced expulsion, which is their goal. Right? That would be helping Israel do that. Okay, but so these are negative reasonings why we can't do something. That to be human and to have compassion and act out of compassion, we have to do this. So it's not about helping Israel. If it happens to help Israel, well, it's going to help Israel have an alternative because they're determined to eliminate this population. And they're willing to let them starve and bond them to extinction, even though it's making them look really bad. And ultimately, it's not going to work. If Israel allows 2 million people to starve to death, that's going to come back on Israel. Israel's not going to survive that energetically. It's going to be, So that's one argument. Another argument is, if the Palestinians leave, they might never be able to return. Well, that might be. But what happens if they don't leave? And then another argument is, their own neighbors don't want them. Syria and Lebanon and Jordan and Egypt already have 700,000 Palestinian refugees. They don't want more. So for us as the world, we're going to sit around and we're going to say, why doesn't Egypt take them? Egypt might let them in if we had a worldwide effort of where they're going to go, and they're not going to be stuck with them. So they could just walk out if Egypt let them in and be dealt with from there. But we need pledges. We need pledges, like 100,000 Palestinian pledges from 20 countries. Right? And it's about, Palestinian self-determination, that they have a right to self-determination. It seemed like the most basic form of self-determination is where you're being bombed and starved, and if you had the opportunity, would you want to go somewhere else? And I'm sure there'd be some Palestinians that would say, yeah, I want to go. I want to get as far away from Israel as I can. I don't want to hear about Israel again. And there's other Palestinians like, no, this is our homeland. We're not going to give it up. And if they kill us, we're martyrs. And the more martyrs there are, the more public opinion turns against Israel. And so they're martyrs for a cause that they believe in. But not everyone with a gun held to their head, with someone saying, give me your wallet or I'm going to blow your head off, wants to die for their wallet. And in this case, the wallet is this pile of rubble, basically. So to say the Palestinians don't want to leave Gaza is absurd. We haven't even asked them or offered them an opportunity to leave. And we're already deciding that they don't want to leave. Because of what? There was a poll. Well, the poll is going to be, you want to get on this helicopter and get out of here, or you don't? That's the poll. With this plane or this boat, or walk through this gate. So it's some kind of a cleavage where the Jewish world is split between the people who are in support of Israel and the people that are not in support of Israel. There's actually a movement called Jewish Voice for Peace, right? And they're pro-Palestinian, anti-Zionism. Those are the two extremes, and there's no really kind of in-between spot anymore. So the same thing is happening for the Palestinians. Who wants to go? Who wants to stay? By offering them the opportunity to leave. You know, right now the political situation in Israel is there's roughly, between the river and the sea, there's roughly 7 million Arabic people and 7 million Jews. And the two-state solution that was proposed of the 1967 borders, I looked at that map last night, and the size proposed to the Palestinian state is about 20% of the rest of Israel, right? And so you're going to take 7 million people and put them in a space 1/5 the size of the other 7 million, right? That's the closest they ever came to a two-state solution. Compassion. And that means equality. You know, really the only possible solution is a one-state solution, a democracy, not a Jewish state, but a democracy with equal rights for everybody. That's what happened here when we ended slavery, and 200 years later we still have kind of economic apartheid and such. So it might take a few hundred years for the Israelis and the Palestinians to learn to live together. But with 7 million and 7 million, Israel is never going to give in to having a one-state solution, a democracy that's not a Jewish state, that's an actual democracy with Jews and other people. As long as, unless they could have a political majority. So if, say, 2 million Palestinians exit, then you'd have 7 to 5, 2 or 3 million. I envision half of the Palestinian population going into the Palestinian diaspora, and the other half either settling for the 20%, better numbers, you know, as far as the crowding, right? Or Israel accepting, okay, we're going to have one state. Anyway, I was studying this thing, and it just hit me one day. Like, why isn't anybody, you know, reaching out? See if there's anything, other bullet points I need to get to. Right. See that this conflict is not really about Israelis versus Palestinians. This particular situation is currently the most extreme manifestation of a greater struggle that is ultimately the struggle for the soul of humanity. It is a matter of free will, freedom of choice. We as individuals exist as fractal emanations. We are protonic and photonic sparks radiating from source. And we are an expression of God's struggle to attain self-awareness. In other words, we're the manifestation of God attempting to be self-aware, or cultivating self-awareness, which is the knowledge of the existence. Because in the void before God didn't know that God existed, right? So free will is a fundamental aspect of the evolution of consciousness, without which God could not exist. So when someone says to you, if there was a God, he wouldn't let this happen, or he wouldn't let that happen, well, they misunderstand the nature of God, because God cannot intervene in the process of what is created through free will in the evolution of consciousness. But just as the Jewish world was split into two sides, human consciousness now is also being split by the same lightning bolt. So because human consciousness before October 7th was a spectrum between love and hatred. And what happened on October 7th is so profound in its implications, because this is really not a regional conflict. It's a global process. If it's anything, it's a global process of a quantum shift in human consciousness, where we're moving into different regions of the celestial realm, where there are different frequencies, and there are things that we have to let go of and that we can't carry with us. And we can, so humans, we're in a situation now where we can no longer thrive in an environmental mix of love and hatred, wherein, like before October 7th, we were able to mix it all together, and we could have a little spiritual smorgasbord of various assortments and combinations of love and hate and anger and forgiveness and all these different things that were there for our evolution, for our education, to attain awareness. And, you know, that goes along with ideas like everything happens for a reason, you know, and it just goes on and on. But all that changed on October 7th, because now we're dealing with a new paradigm. Because of the time frame that we're in, we've reached the point in our evolution where our ability to destroy ourselves has exceeded our ability to make logical and rational choices. This means we can no longer have our smorgasbord from love to hate and everywhere in between in order for our spiritual education and our evolution. But the good news is it's graduation day, and it's wake up or forever hold your peace day. Not just for Israel and Palestine, but for the whole world, for all humanity. Because obviously this situation has the potential of escalating out of our control. We won't even articulate what that means. But we're being tested. And this is the test that if we fail, there won't be any more tests. So we need to pass this one. And then there'll be many more tests after that. But it's free will, or freedom of choice, at its quintessential equinox. The point at which we're at is the lathe of heaven, the dividing of the way, where the in-between ceases to exist, and we are compelled unequivocally through free will and freedom of choice to choose between love and not love. So beyond the veil of appearances resides the true nature of reality. This means that what appear to be conflicts such as the Israeli-Palestinian, or Ukraine-Russia, or India-Pakistan, or Jewish-Christian, Muslim, or blacks and whites, or the white man and the Indian, and so on, no matter what side you're on, the choice is always the same. And there's really just one choice, because the choice is to choose awareness, and the failure to choose is to not choose awareness. And when we act from awareness, which is consciousness, which is the realization of compassion, nothing more nor less than that, Uh, so when we act out of compassion, we create harmony and healing. And when we act out of ignorance, we create chaos. So no matter what side you're on, your choice is always the same. Will you choose or will you not choose, basically? So say what you will about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And yeah, we can go into the details. We have time, but beyond all the whys and wherefores about it, so yeah, there's points of view on both sides. Okay, everybody knows what something about what the different points of view are. So maybe we don't need to go into that at all, and maybe we will later. But beyond all the whys and wherefores about it, you cannot launch an attack on Israel without hatred in your heart. And if you choose love, you cannot launch a violent attack, regardless of the circumstances. I'm sorry, Palestinians. And I'm really sorry, Israel, because you can say what you will. And I'm not talking necessarily to individual Israeli people. I'm talking to Israel as an entity that's acting in a certain way at a certain time, that has a government that's running it in a position in the world, and an approach. So you can say whatever you want and true that as much as you want, and be that as it may. I'm not disagreeing with any point of view. Nevertheless, it is still not possible to starve and bomb 30,000 humans without hatred in your heart. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I hear you saying it's not hatred. It's logic. Okay, I'm going to humor that. So if it's not hatred, what it is based in a thought form. Because thought forms and emotions are the root of all manifestations and conditions. So it's a thought form of kind of eminent domain that justifies and rationalizes a supposed right to dominion over others. Be that as it may, it is still hatred, albeit attempting to wear a cloak of respectability. You can look it up in the dictionary, and I'm referring to a specific part of the definition in Webster's, which says to regard with active hostility as a part of the definition of hatred. That's the part I'm referring to. So Israel, you cannot say that it is not hatred. Because if you had love in your heart, this couldn't be happening. Not saying anybody's wrong about anything. Trying to keep it real simple. So remember, this is the shift, this is the timeline in which we no longer get to have our smorgasbord of love and hate mixed all together in our hearts. The smorgasbord itself is about righteousness, having recognition, validation, and justification for whatever. It's a system of rationalization and denial, a head in the sand ostrich approach to reality. So we really need to get over that. Because we need to be able to sustain continuation of human life and the rest of the life on earth. So, what it's about now is, are we going to apply universal, unconditional, global compassion or not? And not is really not an option. Not if we love ourselves, and not if we wish upon ourselves safety and harmony. We can't just wish it upon ourselves. We have to wish it on everyone. because it's only the illusion that anyone can have it as long as anyone doesn't have it. Persistent delusion, but an illusion nonetheless. So, United States, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, we can't not have life that is built on the death of others than ourselves. And we cannot have true liberty that is built on domination and enslavement of others. And we cannot have genuine happiness if we deny the heart that trembles in the face of suffering. And as we are here now, speaking, listening, talking, the suffering of others goes unabated. So I'm sorry, everyone. That's what's up. It's a fantasy that we can have well-being without applying universal, unconditional, global compassion across the board. Need to say to humanity unequivocally this. Before October 7th, we could have a facsimile of all those things, but no more, because it's unsustainable, it's unrealistic, foolhardy, rash, and reckless, and it's no longer workable. Please remember that, oh humanity, oh Israel, oh Palestine, whoa, everyone.
I want to extend my gratitude for being humbled and privileged that was one of the most complete and all-encompassing pieces that provides a safe passage for humanity to truly live a new heaven and new earth, the jurisdiction of peace.
Oh.
Shalom.
Glad to be of service.